Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Sisters podcast. Gabrielle Celeste, welcome. You guys, I'm so excited for the episode today. And I feel like I say this at the beginning of every episode, but genuinely, I just feel like this topic is going to be fire because I don't know if I talk about it quite enough on this episode, but I'm always catching up, or on the show, I should say, I'm always catching up with my girlfriends, which I should probably not be on the phone as much while I'm walking, but daily walks, my friends, daily walks is what we're talking about and the importance of walking. And I'm so excited to introduce to you Clara Schroeder, an ecotherapist, speaker, and the bestselling author of Re-Nature, How Nature Helps Us Feel Better and Do Better. And her work, her philosophy is science-based and rooted in the profound and often misunderstood connection that we have to nature as human beings, reminding us that humans are completely dependent on it to survive and to thrive, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. And after surviving a traumatic brain injury that left Clara unable to function optimally, and later teaching English in a Nepal monastery to young Buddhist monks, Clara noticed a pattern. The more that she practiced the rhythms, slowness, intelligence of nature, the more her brain healed and her sense of meaning deepened. Wow. Today, she helps people rebuild their resilience, calm, and purpose by reconnecting to the source. Clara, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I can't wait to get into all of it. So we like to do these rapid fire questions just so our audience gets to know our guest a little bit better. And you've been so kind to agree to play the game with us. So thank you for that. Would you be so kind as to share your big three in astrology?
Yeah, I'm a Gemini sun, a lot of Gemini in my chart, Leo moon, and Scorpio rising.
Oh, wow. Okay. The depth with the Scorpio rising, but the mental layer of consciousness that's stimulated by the Gemini and then also needing to be seen with Leo. Wow. Okay. I love that combination. There's a lot of duality there.
Yeah. It's I see all aspects depending on what phase I'm in or what I'm doing. It really, I feel like I've been able to play it to my strengths over time once I understood it better.
Yeah, I bet. Okay. So what is your makeup in human design?
I am a manifesting generator 6-2.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so this is like me just explaining because I don't have the full, I just know it.
Yeah.
Inner authorities wait for clarity.
Okay.
And strategy is respond and inform. So whatever that means to you, doesn't mean much to me, but I have gotten a reading and understood it better, but that was a while ago, so now I'm a little rusty.
Yeah, no, I mean the 6-2 life is so fascinating to me because you quite literally teach through example, but teaching through your own experiences. So it's very teacher energy, embodied teacher energy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. So what are you listening to? What are you binging? You're an author yourself. What books are you reading? Podcasts, documentaries, all the things.
So I wish I had more time to read than I actually do. So right now I'm reading, I have a yoga teacher friend who published her book called My Name is Wilderness.
Okay.
So it's she's also a spiritual teacher, and it's just short form, short stories. And I feel she's talking about chronic pain, and I've experienced that. And so whenever I need a little pick me up, I pick up her book. Podcast, definitely a lot of astrology and just more spiritual consciousness, getting the vibe on things. I feel like that's really important, especially as a teacher, to just make sure that I'm staying informed on the collective level. I when I'm teaching, and we'll get into this, but I'm able to channel for my audience, but I don't channel for the collective as much. And so I'm getting I think Lee Harris is one of the ones that I listen to, and I feel like he gives a really good perspective. So I just, honestly, when I'm not listening to the news, which is pretty rare, I just try to be informed in what's happening collectively.
Yeah, definitely.
Astrologically, collective consciousness, just so that I can be there for my clients, and then I can also explain what I'm sensing energetically. So that's that. And then this week I happened to go to a French mountain film festival, which was really fun. Being someone who's in the outdoors a lot and has practiced extreme sports, I focus on kind of my specialty, which is that psychological aspect of the relationship with nature. And so I just thought, and I'm French originally, so I got a whole lot out of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, a few ways I consume media.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. I would not, and I don't mean this in an insulting way in any
No,
which
no.
way, but I'm like, oh, she's French. Would have never known, you know?
Yeah, I lost the accent when I moved into the East Coast. Originally,
Oh,
yeah. I
okay.
feel like the Boston accent canceled out the French accent, and then I
Hmm.
just now have a California accent. Um, that's how I explain it to people.
Boston's my favorite East Coast city.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I was there. I was there in May because one of our good friends recently relocated from there. But and she still has family out there. So I was like, hey,
Yeah.
like whenever you make it back out there, like I'm going to be packed into your
Yeah.
suitcase. So yeah,
So,
yeah, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so if you had the opportunity to work with someone in the context of your business, co-authorship, anything that involves a collaborative effort with a
mhm.
figure that has either passed or is still with us today, who would it be and why?
Um, I think I would have to say, like, I would have to look to one of my like profound teachers.
Mhm.
I come from more of the Buddhist lineages, so honestly, probably Master Thich Nhat Hanh, Zen Master Thich
Mm.
Nhat Hanh.
Mhm.
I've studied extensively with his teachings, especially on the more like earth related realm, because he did a lot for that.
Mhm.
But I never got to meet him in person,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because he passed.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a regret. And I feel like he still informs a lot of the work that I do. Um, so I'd probably, if I could, I don't know, like co-lead a retreat. Like
Yeah.
that would be like wildest dream. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I did see one of his quotes in your book. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's really cool. Very like the wisdom is timeless with
Mm-hmm.
him. Yeah.
And always relevant somehow.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
uh, okay, so the next question is if you could attend a concert for an artist living or dead, who would it be and why?
Um, I've been listening to more of Shabuzi, the artist.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay.
It's so random, but like I also like I have a background with horses and I like country and
Mhm.
not that he's like pure country, but he kind of has that vibe and they're
Yeah.
just like feel good soulful songs. And
Mhm.
so on a long road trip, I'm always listening to Shabuzi, and I've never seen him in concert, so probably probably
Mhm.
him.
Yeah, I'm familiar with his work because he was it like the beginning of this year, he did a performance with Beyonce. I'm not a fan of
Oh,
Beyonce.
really?
Yeah, but I'm very interested in his work because of just like what he represents. Also
Yeah,
being a black man in country music, and that's not as accepted despite, the roots and it goes back to, their culture and whatnot.
yeah. No, he stands up for a lot of social justice and things
Mhm.
like that, which I really value as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for playing the game.
Thanks. That's fun.
Yeah. So, okay, I just coming across your work and what you write about, what you teach about, what you speak about, just kind of getting into for me the importance of not just getting my steps in from the physical perspective, but
Mhm.
I I've been walking for honestly, now thinking back and I'm kind of like processing in real time as I say this, it's been such an integral part to my
Mm.
spiritual journey. Like I got the download of what the name of the business was going to be when I was on a walk. I innately feel better every time I'm in nature going for a walk, just clearing my head. Like I work with a shaman. I've been in under shamanic menteeship for wow, for like over a year at this point by the time that this podcast episode drops. And we call it like trickster energy. Like I've never had an issue with my trickster fucking with me, like basically
Yeah,
while I'm out in nature. And I
yeah.
just really want to get into like, how you got into this, the importance of it, and how your book educates the masses about its importance as well.
Yeah, and so first of all, I love what you shared, like how you feel that connection in the downloads when you're in nature. And I feel like the channels, spiritually speaking, are so much clearer because nature is such a beautiful container for that kind of work. And
Hmm.
I feel you. I've had similar experiences before. And yeah, so I did write the book. I came out this year. Well, it came out in October 2025. and it's really like you were saying, it's about like reminding people, or even informing people that nature is like a primal attachment for humans, and we are living lives that are so disconnected from reciprocity, from reverence with nature, from even deep respect for like Mother Earth and
Mm-hmm.
planet and the wild beings. I'll try to make the story of how I got there shorter. I mean, I grew up very much connected to animals. We had dogs with my family, and I started riding horses when I was 5 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
that became like a huge passion of mine, equestrian riding. And I studied, I made my way to environmental conservation in college. I started somewhere else, ended up there because that was really like calling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And coming out of like wildlife conservation, and my college was kind of, we were being oriented towards a technical job of like go and restore like the land, or like be a, whatever, trail manager, or I'd already been like taking kids on hikes and stuff, which I liked.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point I was, I don't know, maybe really early 20s, and I was like, actually I'm just like so interested. My spiritual journey had already begun, and people were coming to me and they would share with me, and like psychology was becoming a huge part of my life. Like people would just like open up to me or sit next to me in class because I had a grounding, calm energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think there's like, we're hurting as a population because we're so disconnected. And that became
Mm-hmm.
like my focus.
Mm-hmm.
After college, after finishing my degree, I went to Nepal for the second time, and I was a volunteer teacher at a Buddhist monastery for monks between 5 and like 25 years old. And so I just lived with them, and I went to all of their prayer practices and rituals, and I was really embedded in that energy and that like tradition, which was Tibetan Buddhism. And then from there, pursued spiritual psychology as my master's degree. And I
Mm-hmm.
specialize in a field called ecotherapy, which is like the belief that nature is our ally or my co-guide as a healer and teacher. And that's what I bring to people. Like some of the sessions would be, I'll host like retreats, or I'll do one-on-one sessions with people going on a hike, like we're talking about walking, and we're just like, I'm just the messenger. I'm translating what's coming in through nature and relating it to the person's internal experience. And that combination is so, so powerful. And it like
Mm-hmm.
deepens the level of awareness, it deepens the level of reflection. And I can talk a lot more about that, but that's kind of like a broad overview of the work.
Yeah. There's so that's so layered, and I know that we could go
Yeah.
deep for sure. I think for me, I'm curious because, reading your profile and knowing that you went through a traumatic brain event, how was like nature healing for you in that way?
Yeah. So nature provides, it's like a mirror. And I
Mhm.
feel that if you are attuned to it, you're able to kind of like see your own internal experience mirrored and reflected back to you.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's like welcoming and soft and steady. And that's something that I deeply needed coming out of a traumatic brain injury. And sometimes, like right now, I told you as we were talking before, like it's stormy in Northern California, and winter is here, and it's like windy and rainy. And,
Mhm.
if I looked out of the ocean, I'm sure it'd be like wild waves. And so that dichotomy of like finding myself and my steadiness amongst the changing weather patterns or the changing seasons, like I was literally, like I could barely walk. So I was looking
Mm.
for grounding in like the most still way too, because
Mhm.
I was a pretty high functioning athlete for many, many years until the TBI. And so just finding that sense of like safety, and we can talk about trauma in nature and like how that
Mhm.
shifts the brain um, patterns. But it just like, it took me out of the isolation. It took me out of the depression, you
Mhm.
know, all kinds of really powerful effects.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question is how, like, what was your process of coming into awareness of nature supporting you out of like anxiety, depression, and any mental health challenges you face? Because I've
Yeah,
personally found, like, when I was going through it a couple of years ago, but it always helps me to like be in nature,
for
that
sure.
I significantly felt so much better. So I'm so curious about what that, like, what that process is as you're kind of experiencing that connection in real time.
Yeah, I think it's about remembering that we belong in the world. Like, I feel like we just forget that every time we breathe in, this is oxygen coming from the trees that are breathing it out, like producing it for us. And as we
Mhm.
exhale, they breathe too. That's a very like small example, but just like there's like a deep need or longing in my system from a very young age. Like I felt more seen and understood by animals growing
Mhm.
up than
Mhm.
people because I was a highly sensitive, empathic child, a crystal child. And I had union and unconditional love from horses, for example, that I got to come across.
Yeah.
And so, and again, going back to, this is the Spiritual Sisters podcast, like the psychic channels are open in nature when you're letting them be open and clear and like you're not distracted on, I mean, it's totally fine to recreate outdoors with friends or whatever, or listening to something, but I know that my deepest, like you were just saying, my deepest moments of channeling or just like downloads have come from sitting outside in meditation in nature.
Mhm.
And I forget, what was your question in the first place? Because I've just go off
Yeah.
on
No,
this.
no, I love it. I was picking up what you were putting down. I'm sure our audiences too. Just like, I guess, what's like that actual process of just supporting your mental health as you're physically in nature?
So from a brain science perspective, neuroscience perspective, it's I like to explain it to people. Nature provides, like, we're so much on our screens these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
and that creates cognitive fatigue and cognitive overload.
Mhm.
And that over time, combined with chronic stress and inability to properly recover and restore, because and there's different ways to do that, but one of them is nature. But if you're not putting it into practice, then you get burnout. And burnout is just like chronic overload and nervous system overload and chronic stress. And so nature, just even if like if I look right beyond my computer right now, I see trees.
Mm.
And it's like, or if you look out, I don't know, anytime you step outside, and if you're not in a big city, I live in New York, so I also know what it's like to live in a big city and do this work, but it's like your brain stops looking from a single point focus into like a more of a horizon,
Yeah.
and that actually undoes some of the cognitive fatigue and cognitive overload. And
Mm.
our cortisol is elevated, and nature helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our relaxed response and restore response.
Mhm.
There's the like depression comes from over rumination,
Mhm.
and it's been shown. Like I was just reading a study yesterday that they found that a 1 hour walk in the forest versus a 1 hour walk in an urban environment, same study, they found that the participants had much less rumination from the
Mm.
forest rather than walking outside in a city environment.
Mhm.
And I think it was to do with, it was like a part of the brain that just it's that parasympathetic response that it gets activated and then reduces that stress load. Um,
Mm.
so it's all like all the science is there. I mean, I could go on, but you actually like just connecting with something beyond yourself, whether it's like
Yeah.
spirit or it's nature or it's both at the same time, or like whatever it is. Like I never tell people like, yeah, I'm an ecotherapist, but I'm also a mindfulness teacher and a deeply spiritual person. And as long as you're like going and connecting with something beyond yourself and existing in real life too, I cannot stress this enough. Like outside of your screen, outside of social media, like having real world interactions,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with like a bird that you see or a flower that you admire, or like, I don't know, the snowflakes for some people right now in the country, like it's winter. Um, there's just like all of that is going to change your brain chemistry and make you feel more alive, more like the purpose comes from reducing the rumination and the depression and the anxiety. So nature helps us like just feel more connected, and it takes us out of the like hyper threat response that we find ourselves in post trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
trauma, it like makes your amygdala in your brain like the constant like detector for threat, and nature helps reduce that. Like it helps reduce the prefrontal cortex activity, which is then going to allow your stress regulation to happen better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's all connected scientifically speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. I'm like, oh, that was popping off and like firing a couple of other questions I have. So one of the comments I wanted to make before I ask my question is it's interesting too, because and I might have shared this on the show for our audience several episodes back, but it was around COVID time. And it might have even been like 2021, 2022. And I significantly remember this man, and he was not well. You could tell he was not well,
Mm,
but he was walking, and he was almost kind of like, you know how you have like when you have heavy cortisol, you get kind of like that hunchback. It's almost like
yeah.
as if you're
Yeah.
permanently looking at your phone. You know, it was very much like him looking down. You could tell it was very reflective of his mental state, his self esteem, how he was really showing up for himself in the world. Probably mental health related to that, and there's no judgment in that.
For
But
sure.
I would see him walking by, and he would walk by every single day past my house, and you could literally see over a progression of time him smiling, like his back getting straighter, his posture, like his demeanor completely changed. And you could see that in the walks, and that's why he was doing it. Like I've had enough psychics to know that. So I
Yeah.
thought that was so cool. And you mentioned something to the effect of like, we spend so much time on our phones, and I don't see any of that going away anytime soon, especially with the
Yeah.
rise of AI, excuse me. But my question is where do you see the future of our relationship going with respect to nature, and just how even more important I believe it's going to become,
Mhm.
because we're living in very interesting times, and I can see how much more valuable it is, but it's also kind of like we're not really taking care of Earth, you know?
No, for sure. Well, I think, to that last point, taking care of yourself through connection with nature is taking care of the earth. And that's why I
Mhm.
wrote for nature,
Mhm.
is because the more like everything that you said, I 100% resonate with. Like the more that you individually gain well-being from spending time outdoors or in connection with nature. And when I mean nature, like city parks are great. It doesn't have to be. I always tell people this, like, yes, you can go do the 5-day backpacking thing in the middle of nowhere without service and carry your heavy things on your back. That is like such a small percentage of the population, that just like taking that daily mental health walk on your corner of the street and admiring the trees and paying attention to the weather and like taking full deep breaths, because again, oxygen is life. So um that is where that's where the future is because the more we're like, oh, these moments of connection to myself, to nature, outside. Even like I work with people who have disabilities and have to be indoors, and then we work on like a terrarium, or they like have bird seeds outside for the birds in the winter. Like there's so many options.
Mhm.
The more we're going to be like, I want to protect the thing that's making me feel good. I want to protect the future of my children or my friends' children who are
Mhm.
growing up on iPads and again, I'm not going to comment education in this right now, but like the more we encourage real life interactions with the real external world versus like a screen and
Mhm.
a virtual world,
Mhm.
the more as a society we're going to feel better. Like all the research, I really love research, but like hospital rooms that where they can see out onto trees, or there's like green in the art inside the hospitals, the patients recover faster than the patients
Mm.
who don't have a window where they can see out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. And so to your point about, protecting the future of the planet and the future of the children's and generations to come, I think if more people renatured, or like if more people actually made this a part of their life, no matter how small, they would care more to over time adapt some consumption habits, some maybe eating habits. And again, like
Mm-hmm.
no judgment whatsoever. It's a personal journey, but for me, it starts with the individual connection that you then might share with someone else too. It's like, hey, instead of going for coffee, you're like, let's grab coffee and then go for a walk.
Yeah.
Actually pay attention to, the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like life in general is inherently spiritual, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm so connected to my divinity when I am in nature, specifically walking. It's just what I have the more chance to do. It's what I try to
Mhm.
incorporate into part of my daily routine.
Beautiful.
So I really feel like there's so much value that people are becoming a little bit more aware of, especially as we do spend more time on our phones and computers and tablets and all the things. I'm curious. I want to hear about your life in the Buddhist environment in Nepal. So,
Sure.
what was that like? How did you find yourself there? And was that what like sparked your spiritual awakening and kind of deepened your relationship to nature?
Great questions. Um, Before I went to Nepal, this is a few years before, I dropped out of college. Initially, I went to business school and my undergraduate to do environmental nonprofit management. So
Mm.
that was like my dream. That dream, I was in Silicon Valley studying, and they're like, no, listen, we don't do that. And I was like, screw you, I'm depressed now. And
Mhm.
that's actually what happened. So my first kind of big crisis with mental health was when I dropped out of college. I dropped out because I had deep clinical depression.
Mhm.
And after that, that really ignited my spiritual journey. I mean, I'd grown up with a pretty like holistic family. My mom, she's an animal communicator, she's a
Mm.
herbalist. So like things like that were, fine for me. And I had meditated already quite a bit. And so I traveled. I went to Thailand by myself as a volunteer, like straight, after a few months of college, or maybe a year. Um, and so then I got exposed to Buddhism in Thailand. And when I came back, I started like wanting to dive deeper.
Mhm.
And so I started going to they were Western led. There were Western teachers teaching Dharma, so Buddhist teachings.
Mhm.
And so I just did a few of those retreats, but also retreats are really expensive.
Yeah.
So that was a struggle as a student. And then my junior year, my junior year of college, had been visiting a friend in Sedona a few months before, and Sedona is like such a vortex, energetically speaking.
It really is.
I'd love to hear your experience there.
Yeah.
I was like at a coffee shop, and all of a sudden I get this thing of like, you need to go to Nepal. You need to go to Nepal.
Oh, you were hearing it clairaudiently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like seeing it. I can't remember. It was like, this is my next thing. This is what I'm doing this summer.
Mhm.
And I found volunteering opportunities, and I knew it had to be a monastery. And I almost knew nothing. I knew quite a bit by then about Theravada Buddhism, so more the Thai tradition, hence Thich Nhat Hanh, who's from Vietnam,
Mhm.
but he's on that tradition, and Zen Buddhism. And so I went, and it was Tibetan. I was a Tibetan Buddhism monastery,
Mhm.
and I was there for a couple weeks, almost a month, and the monks became like family, first of all.
Mm.
So I like had a huge, it was like I was like remembering a part of myself. I also feel like this with a lot of like Native American spirituality and traditions, because I
Mm.
feel like I have some past lives there. And same
Mhm.
with the Tibetan Buddhist, like the chants that they had, and the language, like Sanskrit and Tibetan, like it was just like familiar. I didn't understand a thing, but I was like safe, and it was like home. And
Mhm.
I was staying next to his super famous temple called Bodhanath in the Kathmandu Valley. It's like a beautiful, probably seen pictures of it somewhere. And yeah, that really ignited something in me. And after that, coming back, I went twice. I went
Mhm.
2 years in a row. once in summer, once in winter to the monastery. And I also joined a Buddhist Sangha locally in California. And I became more of a like hardcore practitioner. And in terms of nature, the monasteries there, I mean, I got to trek in the Himalayas and see kind of like how connected those cultures are to the land still.
Yeah.
And how much they care about like treating the earth well. I wrote my senior college thesis on a lake in Nepal and like the restoration that was going on there and the protection. Just like really in love with Tibetan/Nepalese culture on the Buddhist side. Yeah.
I have, so, okay, are you familiar with the Gene Keys by any chance? Okay, so they're written by Richard Rudd. Apparently he's coming out with a new book in the summer of 2026, but it's quite literally like all about shadow work, right? And I work with my clients extensively in my shadow work program called Emergence with respect to using that book as the foundation. And in the book, he talks about how like basically like once society, like I think he means this across the board, like on planet Earth, the more that we work in sync with the rhythms, the cyclical rhythms of nature, like the more expanded and healed we'll become, which makes sense. And he was saying how like the Western and the Eastern are basically like flipping sides. Like we're more like or at least trying to become more balanced in nature. And then, you know, they're kind of becoming a little bit more capitalistically driven on that side of the world, which it sounds like you've had the beautiful opportunity to visit, which is incredible. And I can see how you're bringing that wisdom here to North America and beyond. I guess my question, I have a couple, but like if we don't have access to those types of environments, like if you live in a city, how would you advise one to become more connected to nature?
There's so many like really simple rituals that you can do even from the inside comfort of your home. One of them that I wrote about in the book is like the good morning ritual, which is just like if you have a cup of a warm beverage in the morning, even if it's a cold beverage, doesn't really matter. But if you're like making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, just bringing more mindfulness into the ritual and thinking about how it's interconnected with parts of the natural world. Like think about the soil that the coffee beans grew in, and like the tea leaves and what country they came from, and like the water. One of my mindfulness teachers who I interviewed in the book talked about like the water that you're drinking now came from a rain, you know, downpour at some point, and then got filtered through the ground, and then eventually made its way to like a water treating system and is now in your cup. But it came from a cloud. Like even having like a prayer of gratitude and thinking all the farmers and like all the hands involved in getting you that teacup, and then savoring it and remembering that like you are 70% water, like our bodies are 70% water. That is a really small way, but it's like completely like relatively accessible. Other ways is like bringing plants inside your home. There's some really cool studies that show, I have worked with the corporate world, and like they love all the productivity stats. And it's like, if there are indoor plants, fake or alive, in an office, the productivity goes up by like 6%. The like creativity goes up by 15. People are more interpersonal with each other. Like, so bringing plants into your home and cultivating a relationship with them. Like, does your plant need water? Does your plant need more light? Like trying to be more, you know, I just know, more like intuitive about it. I remember once going for a walk in Central Park in New York, because that's where I did grad school, and talking to a friend, and I paused in my tracks because it had just rained and there was a puddle, and inside the puddle there was a pigeon taking a bath. And it was like a pigeon like in the puddle. And I was like, hey, look, the pigeon's taking a bath. It's so cute. And she goes in and looks at me and she's like, Clara, I don't even know how you noticed that. And I said, Clara, I don't know how you can't notice that. Like, what do you mean? And so it really is about like, and that just brings me like to talk about the effect. But that brought me so much joy, so much awe, curiosity. Like same with the little same walk. Squirrel is walking around with like a bunch of nuts because it's collecting for the winter because they're gonna, you know, not have access to food sources. And so all of that thinking, like you are tuning into the cycle, the seasons. Like, we're not that different. We care about, we take showers and we want to make sure we have enough food and enough water to drink. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more of an intentional kind of cultivating of a mindset almost. If you can't, if it's like you just paying attention to, can you see any sky, any pieces of the sky? Are there like plants growing in through the cracks of the concrete? Like, no matter how small, if you cultivate your attention enough, and that's, it's part of it's mindfulness, but you will like feel happier because then like your world expands from, again, your phone and your social media profiles to like a real world scenario where there's like life happening outside of you. So those are just some ideas, but I have many more.
Yeah, I mean, I do think so much of it, and that's a lot of what I've come to understand about just the fundamental principles in my shamanic path and journey is that like it really is intention setting, it really is perspective, it is really like appreciating the little things. And like when you really think about just the interconnectivity of just like, okay, well, how many farmers did it take to get you this specific tea or this resourced good of some sort? So it really does, you think differently the more grounded you become and connected you are to nature, for sure. And I feel like that's been tried and true, at least for me in my experience this last year. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I just want to add that some of that I learned from the monks, because every meal they prayed.
Mm-hmm.
Every meal there was some sort of chant before, and nobody was allowed to eat until that was over. And so like I came back from that and really wanting to make my meals and honor like whoever was involved in the process of making me that meal. When you're in a monastery with like 90 plus monks and food there's mostly enough, but not always, you really appreciate the value. Because the background there, the context is that these monks are often second or third sons or orphans. They don't necessarily end up in the monastery by choice. Their parents see the value of getting them a real education and like a safe home and enough food, but they don't always become monks by choice. And they're in it. Like my youngest student was 5. Yeah. And so, and they have teachers and like their real brotherhood. Now I think since I've been there, last time was 2019, right before COVID, they have girls, they have young girls as well. So I think it's a different side of the monastery, but, yeah, it just made me really appreciate, what goes into, and like they take turns cooking, and like there's like elders who take on the younger ones, and it's like, they're all like brothers basically, but yeah.
Wow. So my business brain is kind of kicking in here without us like getting too much into the numbers, but this was something that I know you're familiar with and can speak to. So I live in I guess so the energy of the town that I live in is very Taurian. It's a Taurus sun. It was established, I think, on the first day of Taurus season, like over 100 years ago. It's in between 2 mountain ranges, and I've lived in a city before. I've always lived by water, which I've been very privileged to be able to say. But there is income disparity here, and I'm curious what, I guess, disadvantages lower income areas might have as opposed to those who have different sets of resources available to them. And that question sparks from, I guess, then the city that I live in, because there's a clear disparity and there's mostly 2 different population types. And I'm just curious what like income disparity and how that can affect one's relationship to nature.
Yeah. Huge question. I love it. I can go on so many tangents, so just let me know if I need to like bring it in. So I just want to start with like environmental justice is social justice. They're not separate. And there's actually, I think, a whole chapter in Re-Nature dedicated to this. The biggest disparity that I've seen and that I'm aware of just like off the top of my head in cities is that lower income populations, they don't have access to the parks. Like where they are, there's no parks, there's no greenery. Like they have to travel further and take public transport to get to a park. Like Central Park, if I think about when I lived in New York, it's Manhattan. It's Upper Manhattan, Upper West Side on one side, Upper East Side on the other side. Then you get Harlem, and then you get the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
I think there might be now a park in the Bronx, but like if they want to go to Central Park, which is the one that everyone talks about, and it's huge, and there are owls there and hawks there, is really hard, right? It's far, it costs money to get there. So that alone, and then like a lot of those lower income areas were built on landfills and or have landfills like right next to them. Like a lot of the waste sites, and this is particularly true for African American communities, that they fought against this for decades, if not centuries. They're like, that's where they end up. And so there's like the systemic racism in the structure of society is there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the issue of nature for certain populations has never been safe,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't feel like they belong there. So I know that when I was a naturalist, so that means like a hike guide in college for an internship, we would get, and sometimes we got kids from like Oakland in California and like really kind of inner city, and they had never been to a park. It was a preserve. The university had a preserve, and so it was like all new to them. And we would pick up rocks and they'd find worms and like squeal and just be like so ecstatic. But that's because where they live and like their parents, they don't know nature. They don't know that it's safe. They don't know how to get there or what to do. And so I think all of those youth programs are so important. And my goal long term is to run a nonprofit for underprivileged youth and in ecotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
That takes a lot of money, but we'll get there. So there, you cannot talk about environmental justice without talking about social justice. So that's just like a starting point. And then also I talk a lot about climate and climate change and the mental health aspects of that and the physical aspects of that. But it's always the, I'm trying to find the words, the marginalized populations that feel those effects more than the privileged populations.
Yeah.
And they have the least resources themselves, and governmentally speaking, they have less support. So
that makes a lot of sense, and thank you for sharing that. My brain totally picked up on one of the key words that you said about just the effect of nature, and maybe, I don't know if you said decrease, but it was something similar to it about how it's affecting mental health. And I would love to speak to that, because I feel like our mental layer of consciousness can be the best and the worst thing for us at the same time.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. What's your question around that?
Yeah. So what have you seen as part of the challenge that it sounds like less of nature is having upon our mental layer of consciousness as a whole?
I mean, it goes back to kind of that conversation we had in the beginning about nervous system regulation. If you imagine living, I don't know if like your listeners are familiar with like Harlem or the Bronx, but like any kind of like deep city area, you constantly have sirens going off, police or firefighters or ambulances. It's tons of traffic, a lot of lights. And if you think of like New York and Times Square, a lot of crowds. It's very crowded. It's very loud. And for your nervous system, that is intense stimulation. And so if you're thinking at that level, if I go home, I'm privileged and my home is like more or less quiet and I have like a safe space to be in. But if I go home and it's a multi-generational dwelling in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment max, and I have like all my family, my extended family, my elders, my younger brothers and sisters, like I'm like giving a picture here. There's no switching off. There's no nervous system restoration or regulation happening. And then you on top of that, so that's just like the reality for folks. And then there's like we don't have a park that I can go to and just like take a breath or go for a walk. And so of course you're going to get issues like depression, suicide, addiction, violence, domestic violence. Like that's how that gets, and that gets perpetuated. I'm having a French moment. Because there's almost no escape.
Yeah.
And so it is about, you know, like, unfortunately, I come from the background that I come, well, fortunately and unfortunately, I come from the background that I come from. And I know there are so many like brilliant social justice advocates who can relate and help those specific populations better than I can, even though I want to. I'm like speaking systemically here. But that's kind of like what happens mental health wise, is that even if you want to have the best mental health, your circumstances are so difficult that, and nature is not an outlet necessarily, unless you take the train for an hour and then get to an area that you don't know, that you have to familiarize yourself with and potentially not feel welcomed in. I don't know, right? It depends on the city.
Yeah. I might have spoken to this in previous episodes, but I went to New York when I was in my intuitive training program. I call it psychic school.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
yeah, and I went down. I was like, I think literally, like, yeah, it was Times Square is hell on earth. Not that I'm like shitting on New York, because I feel like I might like it at different times in the year, but I'm like, there is a literal vortex like going on here. It's just too much for my system. I gotta go. But I can see why people are so enamored by it. It's a Gemini in nature. Like, I think it's a Gemini sun. Yeah, it is. And then Boston's a Virgo, LA's a Virgo. I haven't looked too much into the other cities, but everyone has their own, or each city has their own like astrological sign. Cool. Yeah, it makes you look at them differently for sure. I know that we can keep going and there's so much. You are a wealth of information, I can tell. And so I just wanted to say thank you for your time, but I want to get into just a couple last questions in terms of why you named your book Re-Nature, and what can our audience benefit from picking up your book, and where can they find your book as well?
Funnily enough, Re-Nature, the title, dropped in when I was in New York in grad school.
Okay, good old New York.
Full circle. Yeah. Also, I was there during the pandemic for part of it, and the collective consciousness. I got real comfortable with working my energy boundaries and my auric field, and like life-saving techniques, psychically speaking, during that time, because it's too rough.
It's a lot.
I was having dinner in my like tiny little studio in Manhattan while going to grad school. My brother was visiting. He brought a friend, and we were having dinner in this like tiny little studio. And I was talking about my thesis. My thesis was ecotherapy and why it's important and why it's going to save the world, etc. And I just remember saying like, oh, well, like my book's going to be called Re-Nature. And at that point, I think I was seeing it as like so for the listeners, it's Re-Nature. And at that time, I was seeing it as like in parentheses, Re and then nature. And so it's just like, I don't know, I had the name then. And then while I was writing it, I thought it was going to be named something else, and then something happened, and then I went back to Re-Nature. So, and for me, it's because it's all the Re's that I've already mentioned, like reverence, reciprocity, reconnection, remembering. Like, it's something that's a part of us that we just forgot. Therefore, we need to go back and remember. Yeah. So that's why it's called Re-Nature. What was your other questions?
What the audience can benefit from picking up your book, and where they can find you. And also what you were just sharing right now about the title, I was like, that feels very like divine feminine, like intuitive. That's how I would describe intuition. It's like a remembering of who you are. So I love that definition and example that you just shared.
Yeah, thanks for that layer. I love it.
Yeah.
I haven't done too much like diving into that aspect, so I love it. Well, it is like divine feminine, Mother Earth, right? Like my divine mother is Mother Earth, or Mother Nature. So the book has 3 parts. The first part is more looking at like historically how we got here, because I think that's important, and a lot of people are like quite surprised. And that first third is more like scientific, a lot of research, a lot of data, because I did write it for the masses. And I knew that this was going to sound really spiritual and really woo-woo if I didn't include the scientific context. And so because I was trying to reach a bigger audience, I have that. So it's more like climate focused and like historic ecological, and there's like all the social justice that we discuss, and there's a Native American spirituality subsection, and like just kind of like good background. And then it goes more into well, there's a part about my accident and resilience and how I got so passionate about that, how to find hope in the world that we live in. So hope, resilience, and then it goes more into like self-help tools. So the second and third parts are more like nature meditations, walking and sitting, more like daily tips for how to renature your life, and a little bit more science as well. And also a whole chapter on mindfulness in nature, because that's also, you know, a huge part of it for me. And then the last chapter, this is kind of cool because I know your audience is going to understand. I think I was stuck at 7 chapters. I had the deadline. I wrote it with a publisher, so it was very stressful because of deadlines. And I was pretty stuck. I didn't know how to finish the book, and literally just like downloaded. I started writing, and the last chapter is how to love unconditionally, or how to love better. And I'm talking about like relating not just with people, but with nature and animals from a like almost like compassionate presence, unconditional love perspective. And it just like came out, and I was using examples from my childhood with a particular pony, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really like a mix of spirituality and science, and all about nature connection for well-being and sustainability. The one part that I haven't mentioned, which we talked about earlier, is the ripple effect of like that connection on sustainability, on like more forming a better world and a better future.
Yeah. I love that. And I noticed that as I was going through your book, that you had added that last chapter at the end. And I was like, oh, that's actually really well written and beautifully wrapped up. And I love that it's the balance of spirituality and science, because I feel like we're going to see more of that, especially as just the consensus, like consciousness, it shifts more towards the 5D and seems to be waking up more. And I feel like after these last 2 years specifically, I mean, the 20s decades have been, it's just been a weird time, to be perfectly honest, but it'll be fun to see like where we end up. And I don't think it's without reason or in vain that we're going through a huge transition, and we're all here kind of for the show as human beings.
Definitely.
Yeah. Are you on Instagram, Clara?
Yeah. So it's at Living with Clarity.
Okay, love that.
So because my name means clarity in Italian, and that dropped in when I started like a spiritual blog. My first trip to Nepal, and it was called Living with Clarity. So that's where that came from. And then the book's available. So I also have a book Instagram. It's a little smaller. It's called Re-Nature Book. So because I try to encourage people to share what they're doing with nature and like tag the account. That's why. So if anyone reads it and wants to tag that, feel free. I'll be like super excited to see it. So see how you're relating with nature. And it's available on in like all your local bookstores. They just have to order it. Like you can just ask for them to order it online. It's on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I have sustainable copies as well at home that I can sign and send over.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, I'd love to send you one, but it sounds like you already got a hold of it somehow. So.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm sure that the audience, whoever picks it up, it's going to land in the hands that it's supposed to land into, and who's meant to find it will. But you guys, it's a good one. So be sure to check it out. And Clara, thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful our paths crossed.
Yeah, likewise. This is really insightful conversation.
Yeah. Well, until next time, everyone. Bye.